tonight.
There are not changes to their approach. It is very likely we're going to change our approach.
Israel fires 2 officers for the deadly strike on aid workers in Gaza. The latest on the Middle East and what it means for the presidential election. Plus,
we have good reason to worry that this could happen here.
From Hamas to Hezbollah, global terror threats are at a dangerous level. Why security experts believe the U.S. needs to do more to prevent the next attack. And cancer on the rise worldwide. What doctors say you can do to stop the disease in its tracks. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Israel is punishing the team responsible for attacking a humanitarian convoy in Gaza this week. Welcome to Faith Nation from the CBN News headquarters in Virginia Beach. I'm Wendy Griffith, in tonight for John and Jenna. Tonight, Hamas has turned down the latest proposal to release Israeli hostages. Meanwhile, Israel taking responsibility for the drone strike that killed 7 aid workers in Gaza this week. This as the U.S. increases pressure on Israel to get more aid to civilians in the Strip. National security correspondent Caitlin Berg joins us now with the latest on this. Caitlin, the IDF did an internal investigation into that drone strike. What did they find?
That's right, Wendy. The Israeli military concluded the strike that hit the World Central Kitchen convoy in Gaza was in serious violation of IDF rules and operating procedures. The IDF announced today that 2 senior officers were dismissed from their roles, and other top commanders were formally reprimanded for their involvement in the deadly incident. While the World Central Kitchen says this is an important step forward, they're calling for an independent investigation into the strike. The deaths of those 7 aid workers are considered the latest in a growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. However, Israel has now agreed to increase aid deliveries into the Strip.
Our war cabinet convened last night, and we decided to open additional crossings, the Erez border crossing in the northern part of the Gaza Strip for the flow of humanitarian aid, and to use the maritime port in Ashdod also to increase the capacity of aid that's available to come in.
The decision comes after a call Thursday between President Biden and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Biden made it clear that if Israel doesn't change course regarding the humanitarian crisis, the U.S. will change its policy regarding the war. The president also told Netanyahu that reaching an immediate ceasefire in exchange for the estimated 100 hostages that remain held in Gaza is, quote, essential. Wendy?
Thank you, Caitlin, so much for that report. Well, here in the U.S., the 2024 presidential election is expected to be a close one. One factor that could tip the balance is the U.S. relationship with Israel. CBN's chief political analyst David Brody explains why.
Navigating how he handles the war in Israel is getting tougher for Joe Biden, not only as president, but also in his quest to win re-election. A consistent outcry by his party's progressive wing is getting louder and larger, pushing for action against Israel for what they call a genocide in Gaza. Following the recent tragedy involving aid workers, the Biden administration took a stronger tone, calling on Israel to take concrete steps to end the humanitarian suffering, or else.
If there's no changes to their policy and their approaches, then there's going to have to be changes to ours.
The question of how far those changes go is key because Biden is trailing in the polls. A drastic shift against Israel could further fracture the Democrats' base, putting key swing states at risk in November. For example, the number of Democrats choosing uncommitted over Biden in key swing state primaries has been jarring. It began in February with Michigan at roughly 13%, then almost 19% in Minnesota. This month, 8% in Wisconsin. Rick Klein is political director for ABC News.
He needs Michigan. And I tell you what, at the this election seems, at least in those Rust Belt states, they're going to be one at the margins.
Yeah, I think that's right, David. And look, Michigan is a little less close than some of the other battleground states, 150,000 votes or so. But more than, almost more than 100,000 people voted uncommitted in the primary. So if a big chunk of them decide to stay home or vote Donald Trump, then you start to see a real difference. Joe Biden really can't become president if he doesn't win Michigan.
Later this month comes Pennsylvania, which has the country's fourth largest Jewish population. Middle East analyst Jake Novak spent time as media director for the Israel consulate in New York.
If there's any state in the country where the Jewish vote actually means something, it's Pennsylvania.
Since it has about 3% of the voting population, Biden will need to perform a political tap dance between progressives and Jewish Democrats in Pennsylvania and similar states.
The biggest problem is that he's trying to dance at two weddings. That's an old Yiddish phrase. And you can't do that.
On the Republican side, Donald Trump is also weighing in. As president, he took a strong pro-Israel stance throughout his term, although recent comments about quickly ending the war have raised eyebrows.
What I said very plainly is get it over with and let's get back to peace and stop killing people. I'm not sure that I'm loving the way they're doing it because you got to have victory. Israel is absolutely losing the PR war.
Trump has certainly had a reputation of being very, very strongly pro-Israel, but you're right. Some of the comments he's made have made people question whether that's an unending commitment or if there's limitations to that.
Even with his isolationist views, there's little thought that Trump will push too far against the Jewish state.
My expectation is you're not going to hear a lot of kind of public criticism from Trump toward Netanyahu. There's no real upside in that.
At the end of the day, Israel and Jewish people and Christians who support Israel know that Donald Trump has Israel's back.
Some aren't so confident that progressive Democrats will have Biden's back.
Could it cost Biden the election if it's close?
Well, it's very likely to be a very close election. In that sense, almost everything could be the difference maker. But it's very easy to see a scenario where this is a defining issue. And when the history of the 2024 election is written, that this is among the factors that determine its outcome.
David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Fascinating. Thanks, David. Turning now to the economy, America is on a hiring streak. A new government report out today says employers added a whopping 300,000 new jobs to the labor market last month. That's far above the predicted 200,000. Friday's report also shows unemployment fell to 3.8% in March, down from 3.9% in February. A stunning reversal from last year when economists believed a recession was only months away. The report is boosting hopes the economy is getting stronger despite high inflation. And with that, let's bring in Mark Hamrick, Washington Bureau Chief and Senior Economic Analyst at Bankrate. Mark, good to see you. Good news for job growth in March. Why this unexpected spike last month?
The job market, the U.S. economy, have remained much more resilient and robust than would have been expected. And you're right, Wendy, to reference the fact that we had been on high alert, so to speak, really over the past couple of years for the possibility of a recession. But the U.S. economy has sort of surprised all observers. It is the most robust economy in the globe, across the globe right now. And it continues to have a bit of a winning streak, at least with respect to employment. The low unemployment rate, which has remained below 4% for 28 straight months, the longest streak since the 1960s. We had strong jobs creation across a number of sectors here, including leisure and hospitality. That includes bars and restaurants, the federal government, construction, and healthcare.
Mark, as you mentioned, the unemployment rate staying below 4%, very good news. But interest rates are still pretty high, the average rate around 6.4%. Is the Federal Reserve considering cutting the rate anytime soon?
Wendy, we've had high interest rates in response to something that has been the worst in a generation, and that's inflation. The good news is that on a year-over-year basis, inflation's coming down. But Americans had essentially 1/5 of their buying power robbed from them by the inflation that peaked in the summer of 2022. So the Federal Reserve looks at the current situation and says, yes, the job market's continuing to hold up. Better than expected, better than the Fed itself thought it would hold up. But inflation needs to be tamped down, and we'll have a couple of key readings on that next week to get an update on just where we stand.
Mark, my 401k did not budge for 3 years. It was all flatlined. Now that we're in an election year, it's taking off again. It's so exciting. Is that just a coincidence that we're in an election year?
If elections dictated the outcome of the stock market, we would not have the democracy that we have. And in the sense of it is the performance of the economy, financial markets, and the performance of business, which to some degree is predicated by interest rates, but the Federal Reserve is politically independent. So what really has been dictated by this is the strong response on the part of elected officials. Those are members of both parties who enacted legislation to jumpstart the economy in the early days of the pandemic, and the fact that we have the dynamism of the U.S. economy, including the growth in the labor force. We saw labor force participation grow in the latest month. That's more people working, more people looking for work.
Very diplomatic answer. I appreciate that. All right. Is the economy at risk of a recession? Do you see that happening?
It's part of the economic cycle, Wendy. It's always inevitable. The question's the timing, the depth, and the duration. We survey economists at Bankrate, and going back to early 2022, they put the odds of a recession at 33%, 1 in 3 in the coming 12 months. And that percentage was on the rise going into, let's say, a year in the past. But here in the latest survey, they've tamped down that risk at 1 in 3. That's still elevated. We will have a recession at some point. It doesn't appear to be on the horizon in the next year.
All right, Mark Hamrick, thank you so much. We always appreciate it. Happy weekend.
Thank you. Same to you.
Terror threats on the southern border. Why security officials are sounding the alarm. Next. Welcome back. President Biden got a firsthand look today at efforts to clear away debris from Baltimore's Key Bridge collapse. The White House has already asked Congress to fully cover rebuilding costs. Crews are working around the clock, cutting the bridge's mangled pieces and lifting them out of the water. Officials expect to remove enough of the wreckage to open a temporary shipping channel in the next 4 weeks. That's good news. And they hoping to fully reopen the port by the end of May. Well, a rare earthquake shook millions of residents across parts of the Northeast today. The 4.8 magnitude quake hit New Jersey at 10:23 a.m. and a town called Lebanon was the epicenter. But the shaking was felt hundreds of miles away in several other states. Thankfully, officials in New York and New Jersey did not report any major injuries or damage. However, the quake did delay some air travel. Well, some travelers are thinking twice about hopping on a plane. It's not necessarily due to fear of injury, illness, or even flight interruptions. A new survey from the security company called Global Rescue finds that 36% of travelers are most concerned about terrorism and civil unrest. That's 3 times higher than last spring. Meanwhile, 34% of travelers point to the ongoing wars in Ukraine and Gaza as reasons why they're more likely to buy travel insurance. Threats from Iran, a mass shooting in Russia, and stabbings in Israel. U.S. leaders are worried the next terror attack could happen right here at home. Since 2020, more than 2 million people who are unaccounted for have crossed our southern border. And it's not just the ones on the terrorism watch list, who are raising concerns. CBN senior international correspondent Gary Lane explains.
The recent arrest of a Hezbollah bomb maker at the southern border and ISIS terrorists striking a Moscow nightclub have national security experts concerned the U.S. is also vulnerable. Jonathan Tobin of the Jewish News Syndicate believes Iranian proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah, are targeting more than just Israel.
America is a target, too, of Islamist terrorism. And until we have a government that takes this seriously, that takes border security seriously, we have good reason to worry that this could happen here.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection have reported apprehending 70 illegal immigrants on the terrorism watch list since October. There are also concerns, however, about special interest aliens. Labeled as SIAs, these are individuals who may be considered suspicious based on their travel patterns, behavior, or country of origin. In the summer of 2023, the Daily Caller published data revealing Customs and Border Protection had flagged about 75,000 SIAs between October 2022 and August 2023. During a recent Senate Intelligence Committee hearing, Senator James Lankford asked FBI Director Christopher Wray about these special interest aliens.
Is the FBI kept in contact from DHS and others who those individuals are, or what kind of tracking and monitoring is on those individuals?
I know that we work closely with DHS, especially CBP, on the issue of special interest aliens, including a whole lot of work on the other side of the border to try to prevent them from coming in the first place. And I know there are instances where we're contacted, but I'm not sure that as I sit here right now, I can tell you that we're contacted in every instance.
It's the criminal getaways, those in the country illegally and not monitored by the FBI and police, that worry many Americans. An illegal immigrant charged with the murder of nursing student Laken Riley and the attack on New York City police officers by Venezuelan migrants are just two recent examples. Young Voices commentator and writer for The Spectator, Venezuelan-American Juan Pablo Villasmil, argues government agencies need to do more to keep SIA criminals out of the country. He believes some special interest aliens are members of a notorious Venezuelan gang.
In New York City, NYPD has already determined that there is a presence of the Tren de Aragua in the city. And as we see crime spread throughout the United States, many of them being brutal crime, a lot of people are asking themselves, how many members of the Tren de Aragua are already inside the United States?
While solutions to prevent criminals from entering the United States are under debate, Senator Marco Rubio doesn't believe the recently withdrawn border bill would have fixed the problem. He thinks presidential action would make a difference.
The way you fix the problem is by reversing the executive orders that President Biden put in place in his first month in office, which directly led to this crisis.
An immigration crisis and national security threats that many Americans feel cannot wait until the next president and Congress take office. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Thanks, Gary. Experts say cancer surging worldwide. What you can do to prevent the disease when Faith Nation returns. Welcome back. Every year, tens of millions of Americans are diagnosed with cancer. Now, a sobering new report from the American Cancer Society finds that the disease will increase as the population ages and grows. In 2022, an estimated 20 million new cancer cases were diagnosed worldwide. That number is expected to jump to 35 million by 2050. The findings show that globally, lung cancer is the most common and deadly form of cancer in men, followed by prostate and colorectal cancer. For women, it's breast cancer, most common, followed by lung and colorectal cancer. Well, CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson joins us now with more. Lori, while the report is very sobering, there's a silver lining. Experts say we have the power to change these predictions by making healthier lifestyle choices. What are some things we can do to avoid getting cancer?
So many different things, Wendy. It's a little bit overwhelming. So it's sort of like a double-edged sword. On one hand, we can really reduce our cancer risk, but also there's a lot we need to do as far as our lifestyle changes. So if you ask a doctor, out of all the things to reduce our cancer risk, what would be the number one? They would say smoking. Don't start smoking, and if you do smoke, stop smoking. Other than that, we're talking about things that have to do with our diet. So for example, obesity. We know that obesity is a huge contributor to cancer, at least directly linked to at least 8 different types of cancer. Wow. So get that weight down. Also, when it comes to diet, you'd think that sugar would be the number one thing to cut out of the diet, but it isn't. It's processed meats. A lot of people don't realize how bad processed meats are, and I'm talking about things like my first love, bacon. But also, I know that is
even uncured with the no sugar.
Very good question. It has less of the nitrates and the nitrites in it, but also they can still be bad.
Is better.
And then also processed meats also include deli meats.
No way.
All of the lunch meats. These things can be very harmful. The WHO has listed processed meats as a known carcinogen in the same category as cigarettes and asbestos. So we've got to stay away from those processed meats. Also things like pepperoni, hot dogs, and sausage, so that's bad. So when it comes to diet, plant-based is best, but also fish and poultry is okay. Red meat and pork, not so much. Other things that we can stop doing, stay out of the sun. Sunburns in childhood can cause deadly melanoma. Also, stay out of those tanning beds. Those are really bad.
For sure.
And then other things that we can do is exercise. I've been talking about things not to do, but things we should do, exercise.
Another silver lining, Lori, is that while the number of people who are diagnosed with cancer continues to increase in some countries like the United States, fewer people are actually dying from cancer. How so?
Right. So developed countries like the United States, more people are being diagnosed with cancer, but praise the Lord, fewer are dying from it. Two main reasons: early detection and better treatment. So early detection, the earlier we can detect our cancer and find those cancers, the better chance we have of surviving. So all those different tests that we get, and even things that if we find a lump, if something strange is happening in the bathroom, or if we see a strange, well, go to the doctor, don't wait. Because once a cancer grows and gets in your lymphatic system, then it metastasizes and can grow in other places. But even if you catch it late, there are so many wonderful treatments out there, new treatments available where your chance of surviving is much greater now than it ever has been.
That's so encouraging, Lori. And what cancer screenings should people get? You kind of just mentioned that, though, didn't you?
Right, so your mammogram for breast cancer, your PSA for prostate cancer, go get those moles checked by your dermatologist, your Pap test for cervical cancer, and as I said, some of these you can do. Oh, also, big one, colonoscopy, which can detect colon cancer and in many cases prevent it. If they find a polyp, they can get rid of it right there on the spot. Not the most enjoyable test. Only 40% of people who should be getting a colonoscopy are getting it because it's not the most fun thing to do, but it can really pay off.
I finally got mine last year, and I did it without any anesthesia.
Wow, you're tough.
Well, I was more afraid of the anesthesia.
Okay.
Well, Lori, this is such great information, and I can tell you just have such a heart to keep us healthy, and I appreciate it. I'm so glad I sit next to you all of these years. I'm healthier for it. CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Well, coming up, meet the newest member of the Faith Nation team when we come back. Finally, tonight, we are thrilled to announce the newest addition to the Faith Nation family. There he is, our very own Jenna Browder. Well, that is Jenna Browder's new baby. His name is Thomas Joseph Cope. He was born at 4:04 a.m., weighing in at 6 pounds and 10 ounces. He's about 2 years younger than his big sister Grace, who could not wait to meet him. Jenna says the whole family's doing great. We say big congratulations to Jenna and her husband on that beautiful baby boy. And that is one pretty baby boy. Wow, good job. Well, that is going to do it for us for this day and this week for Faith Nation. Have a great weekend, everyone. And as always, God bless you.